Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. I'm Philbert D, and we're back from vacation. This is Phil on Films. This week, we're talking about Quezon's Game, Brightburn, and Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Herbert and I received this telegram today.
They want to exterminate the Jews.
We need to get them out.
And bring them where?
If I can get them out, will the Philippines take them in?
The year is 1938. President Manuel Quezon, played by Raymond Bagaching, receives word of a bloody German campaign against the Jewish people. He commits to a plan for the Philippines to take in thousands of Jewish refugees, a plan that pits Quezon against formidable forces both at home and in Washington. This is a fascinating chapter in our history, and it doesn't get covered nearly enough. The film depicts President Quezon as a raconteur president, known for his movie star good looks and his ego as much as his statesmanship. What's interesting is that the film doesn't let him off the hook for his failings, bringing up agrarian reform more than once, which strikes an interesting chord as we watch the landowner Quezon try to use his property as leverage for his humanitarian crusade. The film finds a measure of complexity there, and that helps a lot given that a lot of this movie is just men sitting around card tables discussing the plight of a people on the other side of the world. It can't help but feel stodgy at times, limited by the scope of the action, but it's properly rousing when it needs to be. It makes these strong, thematic connections that speak of who the Filipino is in the narrative of history. Raymond Bagaching is pretty good as Quezon. More than just an impression, Bagaching has this conviction that really captures the gravity of the moment. It's far from perfect, but it's dramatically sound, and it might just leave you feeling a little proud to be a Filipino. And given where we are now, I'm more than happy to recommend that. 4 stars.
Every name that Alex crosses off that list is going to die.
Why can't you understand this?
This is the Philippines. We will stand against Hitler.
Quezon's Game.
Whatever you've done, I know there is good in you.
Elizabeth Banks and David Denman are the buyers, a married couple from Kansas struggling to conceive a child. Then, one night, something falls from the sky and lands near their farm. They find a child in that crash site and they raise it as their own. Years later, Brandon, played by Jackson Dunn, is discovering that he's not quite normal. He develops superhuman powers and he soon starts using them to lash out on others. If that synopsis doesn't make it clear, the Brightburn is a twisted take on the Superman origin story. It presents a scenario where the superpowered character doesn't grow up to be so benevolent. It's a cool premise, but it isn't much more than that.
You are different.
Caitlin, get my hand up.
He's a creep.
Help him up.
What are you doing?
The movie is all surface, and it comes off as needlessly sadistic because of that. It becomes pretty clear that the movie isn't actually interested in subversion. It just wants to stage these horror scenes where the threat is an unstoppable, superpowered kid. The meat of this movie is this practically invisible, functionally invincible monster stalking hapless humans, harming them just because he can. Meanwhile, the parents are kept in the dark for way too long, not letting them deal with the emotional conflict that might arise from learning that the child that they raised is a monster. It doesn't explore its Clark Kent analog to an extent that would make him a compelling villain. It just hosts on the recognition of familiar elements and then revels in the manufactured edginess of its violence. 2 stars.
Rodan, Ghidorah, Mothra.
Oh my.
They're everywhere.
It's comforting.
The film takes place 5 years after the events of the last movie. The mysterious Monarch Corporation has been secretly locating and containing other titans, hoping to find some key to humanity's survival in an age of monsters. Unfortunately, an eco-terrorist group attacked several of their facilities, setting dangerous titans free to wreak havoc on human populations. Monarch once again turns to Godzilla to fight on the Earth's behalf against an apocalyptic threat. Those are just the broad strokes. The film actually pins its emotional arc on this family drama involving the scientist who lost a kid in San Francisco when Godzilla went there 5 years ago. It isn't very effective, and despite the best efforts of Kyle Chandler, Vera Farmiga, and Millie Bobby Brown, it never really connects enough to not make it feel like an unwelcome distraction. To be fair, everything else in this narrative is muddled and distracting. There's just too many things going on, all of it half-hearted and underdeveloped. This is the kind of movie where a named character might die and you'll just forget about it in a couple of scenes because it's never brought up again. But let's be honest, we're all just here for the monster fights, and those are okay. Too much of it takes place in darkness, and there are a bunch of particle effects that further obscure the action. But yeah, to some extent, there is just a base satisfaction to watching Godzilla fight Ghidorah. As a whole, the movie is a mess. But if you're just looking for a kaiju smackdown, it's there. 2.5 stars. So thanks for joining us. If you're wondering what I thought of Aladdin, it's fine. 3 stars.
Loyalty to wishes 3. I'm kidding. Watch this.
Also, if you're wondering what I thought of the last interview, the Mayor Antonio Halili story, I hated it. 0 stars.
Isa lang sa tingin ko may mga reklamo dyan. Mga drug dealers.
Like and subscribe, leave a comment, do all the internet things, and until next time, goodbye internet, congratulations Quark and Bianca. In Shin Gojira, the whole story is told from the perspective of bureaucracy. It presents an effective Japanese bureaucracy dealing with a the disaster being Godzilla. A monster movie where the characters are all bureaucrats, where the heroes are all bureaucrats who get people to safety.